I'm here with Claire Mace, who unfortunately cannot be at the Fringe this year, but was intending to come. But I believe that you are doing a little tour of other fringes in the world.
Yeah, and unfortunately, something went skewy with my venue, and I was thinking about what to do, and then I got a couple of other offers of work in that week, and I was like, ah, well, I'm based in North Wales, so Edinburgh's kind of quite a long way to drive.
Yeah.
I've been touring the last few months, a storytelling show, which it's so much fun. It's based on the Welsh myth of Cilwch and Olwen, but it's all about plant folklore and mythology. So actually, a lot of the gigs that I've been doing have been in Wales. So not gonna do Edinburgh this year, but thinking about it for next year.
Yeah, exactly. But you've got to get in there early and then keep pushing so that you get a venue that might still be there. But you can't tell because by the time the Fringe comes, everything changes. It's just all up in the air. I don't know what, especially this year, it's just been what's happening. So
I mean, I did I did go to the Edinburgh Fringe a few times when I was a student, so we're talking like 25 years ago. Um, and it was like glorious chaos then. Like so many shows, so many people, so creatively exciting, like both really stimulating and totally draining at the same time. And I can only imagine that that's gotten more and more and more and more.
there's
Um,
an awful lot of shows up here. But the trouble is, everyone's competing for the same audience. It's not necessarily there, especially because the prices have gone up, and also Oasis are here this week. And a lot of people don't even know that there's a festival on. I was talking to somebody in the copy shop. I was like, "Oh, what show have you got expecting?" Because they were having things printed. Oh, I didn't even know it was a festival. I just came up here for the views. It's like, okay, just so you probably saved yourself an awful lot of stress, actually. But you can
well,
build to next year.
yeah, definitely. And I kind of feel like there's it's such a challenging environment in so much way. There's so much going on that you've got to kind of turn up and be kind of fairly aligned about what you're
Mm,
doing in terms of sort of the venue and your publicity and
yeah,
targeting journalists and reviewers and yeah, I think it's really interesting because this is the first year that I've done like a proper tour.
mm,
I gotten into sort of professional storytelling over the last 3 4 years, but a lot of the time, it's going into, oh, I don't know, Anglesey Astronomy Society who want an evening of star stories, and so it's
yeah.
pretty local and it's pretty kind of customized. But this is the first time I've come up with a like this is a full length show, and I'm going to do a tour, and then called everybody I know and some people I don't know, and put together a tour schedule. So I'm doing kind of nearly 20 performances of it, and
That's
so
good.
it's been a massive learning curve, kind of both the stuff in Wales and also what didn't happen in Edinburgh as well.
Well, I know. And it's also, you've got to just take it on the chin sometimes and go, oh, well, that wasn't to be, and just carry on with life and your performance and everything. So you've only got into storytelling in the last few years. Is that since lockdown or just before?
Well, before really, I mean, I started going to a storytelling festival called Festival at the Edge when I was in my 20s. So I've been listening to traditional storytellers and some of the best. I mean, I know a lot of really amazing storytellers across the UK from Festival at the Edge. So I've been listening to really good traditional tellers for years and years and years and years and years. And I was always like, I will not be telling the stories. But then I just hit a point where I was like, I want to see more storytelling happening. One route to that happening is me telling stories some
Mm.
of the time. So I've kind of been easing towards that for a while. And the year before lockdown, I started doing a load of kind of freebie gigs and getting in on, charity festivals and this kind of thing. With lockdown, I actually stopped because it wasn't um I don't know. I think kind of it's a hard sell online if it's not something you're
Mm.
expert in. But then since lockdown, it's very much come back, and I've played a little bit with doing production, arts production. Um, but I'm kind of mostly focusing on the storytelling at the moment, which is just
That's
awesome. I think we live in an era where traditional stories have a lot for us. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
traditional stories have existed and endured like for hundreds and thousands of years since before humans have been reading and writing en masse. And so the media that we have now, we have radio, we have television, we have the internet, we have all manner of things you can scroll through that are kind of really hooky for our brains. But actually, a good story told well is also really compelling because that's what we're evolved for.
Mm. Exactly. You've got the whole the mythos and everything is it's sort of in your veins in a lot of ways. You've got one of this, is it one story of the Mabinogion that you're focusing on, or are you like moving to some of the others as well? Yeah.
Yeah, so in the medieval manuscripts in which the Mabinogi stories are written down, there are kind of four famous ones
Yeah.
that are the official Mabinogi, but there are
Yes.
other stories written down in the same
Yeah. And
manuscripts.
then that's the Mabinogion. Yeah.
Yeah, which it can get very academic as whether it's
Yeah.
Mabinogi or Mabinogion, and but kind of so kind of it is and it isn't part of the Mabinogi. It's in the same manuscripts,
Ah.
but it's not one of the four branches of the Mabinogi. So
Ah.
the story I've been working with is Cilach and Olwen. And I don't know if I give you like a really short summary,
Mm.
young man is cursed by his stepmother that the only person he can ever love is the giant's daughter Olwen, goes on a massive quest to find her. When he finds her, her father, the giant who hates humans, says, well, if you want to court my daughter, you have to complete tasks and tasks and tasks and tasks. There's like 40 odd tasks. I
Mm.
don't, in an evening show, I don't get the chance to tell all of them in full. Um, he gives him tasks, and it's really interesting because some of those tasks are like quite agricultural,
Mm.
and some of those tasks are quite. It's towards finding elements that can be used in ceremony.
Mm.
Um, because this is a spoiler. Forget this before you see the show. But at the end, when Killuch, the young man, has completed all these tasks, brought these things back, they kind of set up for the wedding, and then the giant is sacrificed right before the wedding. Makes it a weird wedding party. Nobody does that these days.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But
'Cause,
yeah,
I mean,
it's a
mm.
rich story.
It is. But you also, when you listen to any stories, you go, "Oh, that sounds a little bit like this other story." I mean, there's elements of Gawain and the Green Knight in that as well, with the whole giant killing and doing the tasks and yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And what I didn't mention in my summary is Arthur, King Arthur, because in the written down version of the story that we have, King
Mm,
Arthur is a really large figure.
mm,
And he's the medieval Arthur.
yeah.
Now, the medieval Arthur, pretty patriarchal. It's quite a lot about tribes and land and
Mm,
power. And a lot of the women aren't even mentioned by name. They're just,
mm,
so and so married somebody else. Um, so, but in one of the analyses of Killichinolwen by a wonderful woman called Rachel Bromwich, who sort of did a load of scholarship and sadly is no longer with us, she put the question as what would this story be without King Arthur? Because there was a time historically and mythologically before King Arthur.
yeah.
So I've been really informed by that when I've been working with this story. It's like, what are the older meanings? What are the deeper meanings? But he does hang around King Arthur,
Mm,
totally, and it's really interesting looking at the difference between King Arthur in the Welsh tradition, King Arthur in
mm,
the English tradition, King Arthur in the medieval times, King Arthur when he started to get popular on the continent, which is much more recently,
yeah.
because there are very different flavors to those things. And I think this is a wonderful thing about traditional stories is that they morph and they grow and they change through time. And it's so important to be respectful as much as is possible to the roots and the culture of that story, but then also to recognize you're sharing that story with other people who are alive now in a
Mm.
context that it's now. And so that is also important as well.
Yeah, it really is. The thing about King Arthur, though, there's an awful lot of argument about where he's from, even though he's mythical, so nowhere. But I know Cullean is a big because I'm living near Cullean. It's like, well, it's obviously Cullean, but other people are like, no, definitely not. It's from my hometown. So there's a lot
I
of
mean, the way I see it is that actually you go back and you find this Brythonic you go back to the Brythonic time
mm,
basically. And the people who spoke the Brythonic language, which is essentially the forerunner of Welsh,
yeah,
those lands went all the way down to Cornwall and all the way up to include the Lake
yeah,
District.
yeah.
And even in the medieval times in Wales, you have kings who are traveling around different areas.
Mm,
So rather than there being like one big palace, there's like a series of big halls.
yeah.
And so your ruler actually is on the road a lot because they're going round. They can't pick up a phone and find out what's going on the other end of the country. Actually, they've got to travel round and do that. So actually, this idea that there is going to be only one palace and one correct palace, I think, is a misunderstanding
Yeah,
of that situation.
true. I mean, the whole kingdom was very much vastly wider than it is now. I mean, not the King Arthur one because that's, obviously, but the actual Kingdom of Wales and Cymru, just this is just all the way up to Scotland, really. It was quite a long way at one point, as
Yeah.
far as Edinburgh, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got borders that move as well because at the
Yeah.
edges of those territories, you've got territories that are being lost and territories that are being won. So it is a movable thing.
For
And
sure.
there are some great stories from those that kind of southern tranche of what is now Scotland,
Mm,
which very much belong to that Brythonic tradition.
yeah.
Um, and so I've heard people from Scotland tell them, people from Wales tell them, which is a really uh, I don't know. I think the further you roll back in time,
Mm,
the more you realize that the question of what country is what, and what people belong to which land,
yeah.
and and you recognize that humans have been, moving around the world, and since we can build little canoes,
Well,
so
exactly. Yeah.
which is a long way back. And yeah, so I think it just gives a real different perspective. And when we're in a time where people are getting very like, this is my nation, it's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't go back forever in time, you
No.
know?
In fact, I mean, when you look the further back in time, it's sometimes surprising how far a person could go in their life. And you start researching even people in your own family from 300 years ago, and it's like they're popping up all over the place. It's like you don't even think of people traveling that much, but I think that the infrastructure was possibly better. Maybe it took a long time, but it was a good structure of getting from one place to the other that people
I mean,
took
people
advantage
just,
of. Yeah.
people would have been much more skilled in sailing, you know,
Mm.
in using a little boat to get from A to B. um, or recognizing that actually it's going to be quicker to move these goods by a little boat round the edge of two counties by sea than it is to take them by horse and cart. Right? So so we don't have that perspective. I think we're a lot more landlocked than we were in many ways, even though we've got cars and planes and stuff. And also we live in a context where people have addresses, and
Mm.
it's really hard to live if you don't have an address. It's really hard to live as a traveler. Everybody's pretty much forced to live as a settled
Mm.
person. Some people do live as travelers, but it's much, much, much harder. Um, and so that's a whole realm of a whole way of living
Mm.
that's really shut down at the moment as well.
Mm. But certainly boats. I saw a video, a silly video, saying, oh, well, they must have done some sort of magic to get the capstone from Scotland to Stonehenge, and the blue stones from Wales, some sort of magic. But it is boats. It's boats. That's all it is. Easy. There was an awful lot more water and more waterways back then because they filled them all in since then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we have engineers in our time now. I'm sure they have engineers back then, whatever word they had for engineering. You have people who love that kind of stuff, who love making boats and who love doing stuff with pulleys and who love kind of figuring out, oh, this weighs so much and that, and this material has this property. It's part of our human capacity.
It is. It certainly is. Now, talking of places, you're in North Wales. What's the poetry? Well, not the poetry scene, the spoken word, a storytelling, the scene of it all blends into one. It's like there's no borders between poetry and storytelling. It's all the same thing. What's it like there?
Yeah, it's interesting because North Wales is a lot less populated than South
Mm,
Wales, but there is a lot going on culturally. Definitely loads of poetry groups,
mm,
little bit of storytelling, trying to encourage more storytelling all the time. Some great local theatre producers as well. And but I think what you have to bear in mind in North Wales is that actually the first language, the just in Gwynedd, so it's still a
mm,
majority. and the majority of people will speak Welsh or some Welsh. So the scene in y Gymraeg
Mm.
is very different to the scene in English.
Yeah.
So it's always important to recognize that because you're just kind of slightly different cultural things going on. I've actually just got back from the National Eisteddfod that happened in Wrexham,
Oh yeah.
um, finished like 2 days ago. So it happens in the first week of August, moves around Wales. This year was near Wrexham.
Mm.
And something like that was just this massive explosion of culture in pretty much every art form you can think of in the Welsh language.
Mm.
That is so rich as well because that has very deep historical roots. Everyone in the Welsh language community knows everybody else within about 2 degrees of freedom.
Yeah.
It's like that makes a massive difference culturally, like massive, massive, massive.
Yeah, I
So
mean, as a non-Welsh speaking, until fairly recently, I'm trying to learn it, but it's quite difficult because for the area that I am, it's not really that high a population. I think there were a lot of people in the last 200 years came in and out of it. But the Eisteddfod came to Pontypool, I think, in 1914, and it wasn't a Welsh-speaking area then. So it does make you think, well, they must have people must have come from away, but everyone was still very into it, even though they didn't necessarily understand anything. I think there might have been an English language element to it more then, though.
yeah, I mean, I'd say like for people have a misassumption that you can't go to the Eisteddfod if you don't speak Welsh. You totally can go to the Eisteddfod if you don't speak Welsh. For a start, something like a music program,
Mm,
like often people aren't hearing the words anyway. And then there's a lot of stuff you can understand without having a sophisticated understanding of the language or even any of the language. And also certain events have translation on them. You can go and request if you want to go
mm,
to a particular lecture, you can go and request that there's translation for that. Um, and there's something like as a learner, say doing something like yoga in the language that you're learning, you really learn on a different level. So it's an amazing context to come and experience, definitely.
but there are also at least three. I mean, there are local ones as well, but is there the international, the national, and the Are they three different things, or do they cross over?
Yeah, so the national one, the Eisteddfod Genedlaethol,
Hmm.
is the one that just happened in Wrexham.
Yeah.
It will happen in Pembrokeshire next year, and who knows where the year after. The Urdd Eisteddfod is mostly for kids. I
Mm,
believe that's having Anglesey next May. And yeah, the international Eisteddfod is always based on Llangollen. It's a little bit more classical. I think a little bit more English language as well, to be fair. So yeah, and then you have local Eisteddfodau, which are any village could be like, right, we're gonna have an Eisteddfod, and there'll be competitions, and there'll be like people coming together and having fun. Um, there's a lot often in there's a real mix as well between things that are about encouraging children and young people and then things that are open to kind of people of all ages. Um, in terms of poetry, I have been really inspired and amazed by um, Welsh poetry because it's much more of a living art form in many respects. It's not that it's not living in English, but whenever I've come across poetry, the English poetry scene, it's been quite educated,
mm,
quite stuffy, quite clever in its use of language. Poetry scene in Welsh is just much wider. You have stuff that is just fall out of your chair laughing funny, all the way up to very sophisticated use of words. In fact, um, system of poetry called Cynghanedd, which involves different internal rhymes and structures and stuff. Very sophisticated, very fancy. I've started learning, but it's going to take me another 10 years to get my head around it. Um, so actually, the Welsh poetry scene is very vital and very much, poetry and music are one of the places that I think people talk about really serious
mm.
subjects. People talk about important things in a way that can sometimes reach out to a wider audience than I have a sense of in the English scene.
Yeah. I completely mispronounced it. Earth, is it? Earth. It's just the U. It's very difficult when there's a letter that appears in several languages and the way that you pronounce it. Because I know that Welsh is phonetic, but it's not the same phonetic as English, and that is
Yeah.
confusing.
Well, the good news is that it is much more phonetic than English is. English is a
Yeah.
mongrel language. English is just appropriated bits
It's
of
all over
language
the
all
place.
over the place.
No, but that's it. But
Whereas
you have to
if you,
forget things in order to
yeah,
go, I know it is phonetic, but what is it again that it's phonetic for?
yeah, and but once if you spend a term learning,
Yeah.
you'll get that phonetic pronunciation. And it becomes the wonderful thing about the Welsh language is eh, there is so much richness that opens up at
Yeah.
whatever point you're learning. So even
Yeah.
if you get the sense of the pronunciation and start to be able to pronounce place names and understand place names, you realize that so often the names are telling you something about
Mm.
the land you're in. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
like Bryn Gaer, for instance, is a hill fort,
Yeah.
you know, and oh well, that's not just a hill, that's a hill that used to have a fort on it,
Yeah. It's very
you know.
exciting. I live near somewhere called Lan not Lantarnum. Where am I looking? Lasgarn, which blue rock formations really, and it's like it's a wood. You didn't. It's a tip off. The whole areas there's Garn. Everywhere's Garn. So you're like. There's a lot of ancient monuments here that aren't really catalogued or anything. You just have to go and you go, look, there's a burial mound. Oh, there's another one. Oh, look, there's a pile of stones there too. But they're all falling apart because they're not there anymore, really.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot, there's so much.
Exciting. Anyway, very nice to talk to you, and I'm sorry that you couldn't make it up here, but next year, there's always next year, hopefully.
Yeah, and I've got kind of I'm doing a few more I'm doing a few more performances through the summer. This
Mm.
I'm going to next weekend. I'm going to the Anarcha Folk Festival in Llanfyllin, which is a weekend. I'm so looking forward to it. It's like a weekend that's like a mashup of folk music and herbalism and anarchism. So looking forward to that. And I'm also in September going to be doing the story the it's called Sacred Herbs of Britain, the story,
Ah,
or Pellysiau Sanctaith Prydain. So I'll be doing that in Lichfield as well, Tuesday, 9th of September,
nice.
and at Gallery in Carnarvon, Friday, 19th of September. Hopefully it gets a Word in Edgeways Festival, which is a lovely spoken word festival in Shropshire in October. And there's some dates booked in for next year as well.
Yeah.
But the best place to find out where and what I'm doing, if you go to anadly.com. Now that is actually, it's got one of those tricksy U's in it. So if I were to spell it in English, it would be anadlu.com. But that's pronounced anadly.com because anadly is the word for breath,
Nice.
which is important if you're telling stories.
It really is. Okay, thank you so much, Claire. And it's good to see the scene outside Edinburgh because once you're in Edinburgh, it's like it's only for 3 weeks, but it feels like forever, and it feels like you'll never get out of it. So it's nice to know what's happening on the outside world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the summer's always fun, isn't it? Because there's lots of festivals and things going on. And I do think, I mean, Edinburgh is an immensely creative melting pot. You don't know what you're going to get from it. But 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 it's I always feel I mean, when I used to go, I used to kind of come back on the train and be like, wow. And I'd have some like amazing idea for something just from, I don't know, all the seeds that get planted, all the sparks that light up. So enjoy, people at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah, brilliant. Now I'm probably going to talk to you a little bit after this, but that's the formal part of the interview over with, and that's what I'll put up.
Ah,
Thank you so much, Claire. Have a
ah.
lovely summer.